All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We've been really looking forward to this webinar. We've got a lot of interest in it. This is our not only first webinar of the year, but it's also our first in command, the CEO, Adam Gavich, who is going to be walking us through his vision. We're talking about SaaS Security Platformization in 2023. Let's get right to it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam. I'm very excited about today's webinar. It's going to be awesome. Make sure to input your questions. We'll address them down below. All right, I'm going to share my screen and let's get started. You see my screen, right? All right. So here's the agenda for this webinar. We're going to make it nice and simple. I'm going to start by a quick intro. What led me to this thing anyway? I'm going to talk about SaaS security, fragmentation and impact as of today, why it happened, how it originated, what's the impact on your security teams. And then I'm going to talk about, platformization or consolidation, however word you want to choose about, how it's going to look like, how it's going to work, what's the benefit of that. And we'll leave it with some recommendation about what's next to ensure that you're not left with nothing. And of course, we're going to open it up to question and answers. We're patient. So let's get started. Just a little bit about me and my journey into SaaS security. It's been quite a journey so far. All the way back to 2005, I started with network security, firewall, load balanced routers, all of those hard toys you install in a rack. I moved over into software engineering. I love it. It was super fun, developing backend services across cloud infrastructure. Made my way to being a product manager at Amazon, primarily consumer payments and user experiences. And then I became a product manager at Google Cloud Security team. I started with the Google Cloud DLP platform, and then moved over to launching the GovCloud solution for the public sector. It was a lot of fun. And then I ended up being, the founder and CEO at DoControl, which, we're doing SaaS security as of today. So as you can see, I've been here quite a while. I've been evaluating security from multiple angles, and I'm super passionate about SaaS security specifically. Let's talk about this. And you're dealing with dozens, if not more, of security vendors solving every aspect of information security across all levels, right? Anywhere from the cloud to on-prem to endpoints, mobile, identity, network, and everything in between. That is a lot of vendors, a lot of different user experiences, so many different support experiences. That is a lot of feature requests opened by you to the respected vendor. That is multiple renewal processes going on your procurement, legal, finance, and compliance teams. Give it a second. It's a lot. It's very complex. Today, we're going to focus just on SaaS security, just on one tiny little cube that mattered a lot in 2023. And as you can see, it is very fragmented. And we're broken down into 5 different categories, starting from data. You have CASB and DLP solutions that provide some kind of SaaS security capabilities that really focus on the data side of the world, right? What kind of data you have, how much data you have, what is the data sensitivity, how to remediate that, and so on and so forth. And then you have solutions focused on permissions, right? How do we review permissions ongoing? How do we let the end user review those permissions on the security team's behalf? How do we grant just-in-time access to particular folders or systems, right? Very important. You have the OAuth side of the world. How do we comprehend all the OAuth tokens or programmatic access we grant to third-party apps that now have access to our company SaaS application? On top of that, you have the security operation and automation. How do we orchestrate that? How do we detect and respond to some of the threats involved with SaaS security, right? Threat by people, threat by systems, threat by processes, and everything in between. And of course, you have the misconfiguration side of the world. How do we mitigate a misconfiguration done by a SaaS admin who may or may not be part of the security team, right? So all in all, you can see that there are multiple approaches to SaaS security today across all of those SaaS ecosystems, from Salesforce to Google to Microsoft, and so on. And today we're going to review, to answer the question why, first of all, why is it like that, right? Why do we have so many vendors? What's the technical foundation to implementing those solutions? And we're going to evaluate the pros and cons of those implementation to help you understand, what am I signing up for, right? Before you even talk about platformization. So let's start. Warning, in the next couple of slides, there are no marketing fluff. So don't expect any buzzwords. It's just pure technical language. There are primarily 4 approaches to SaaS security. I'm going to review each of them. Inline proxy, API pull, API push, and API pull and push. Let's see how it looks. Inline proxy is the traditional way of doing SaaS security, started more than 10 years ago. It basically, implemented an agent on your endpoint device that goes and say, okay, I have all the traffic, I can see it, I can block it, I can perform SaaS security. Thumbs up. It was amazing for the on-prem world, where you really had to have a VPN to connect to your office network from which you could access SaaS application, right? It's not so much relevant today when people browse from any device, from any network, right? But it is there. Another way to implement inline proxy approach is by having a browser extension, right? It sounds simple. In one click, install a browser extension. But what happens is that browser extension doesn't really have access to the actual SaaS application, which means it lacks a lot of context and create a lot of data integrity issues. If you see an ongoing interaction by a user, you don't even know who that user is, how much access do they have to what other system, and who did they collaborate with, and so on and so forth. That is one approach. The other approach, which is a little bit more modern, is what we call API or out-of-band in a pool manner. What it means is that the implementation says, okay, reach out to the, let's say, Google API and pull all the information you can. And then it's amazing. You get a full end-to-end picture about how much data do you have, what people own it, and how is it exposed internally and externally, and so forth and so on. But the problem is that on a pull method, every couple of hours, you got to go and ask Google, okay, give me the data. Give me the data. Give me the data. In between those intervals, you have data integrity issues. Because the moment you have the visibility on your exposure, it changes instantly. Because people keep collaborate. People keep pushing the business, right? So in between those intervals, you have no clue what's going on because you don't have near real-time or near real-time insight into what's going on. You don't have any idea about the current live people activity, right? That is one approach. The other approach is where we call it push. That's where I'm telling the SaaS app, hey, I'm subscribing to all the event activities that you support. Whenever there is a new event, please push it to my system, which is amazing. Because now when people click on any SaaS platform, you get that information in real time from the respective SaaS platform. When people download, share, view, edit, delete, copy, whatever that is being pushed to you so you can have a near real-time monitoring about the ongoing user activity. The problem is that you don't have anything else. So you don't know how much data is there, how it's exposed, who owns it, who have access to it. It's a big problem, right? User activity alone is not sufficient to reduce the attack surface. You got to have also understanding on how your data looks like. And that's where the last approach steps in, the push and pull. In this approach, we're saying, okay, we're doing both. I'm subscribed to all of those events. Whenever something happens, I know about it in near real time because you push it to me. But also I'm pulling every few hours all the extra information. How much data do I have? Who owns it? How it's exposed? Yada, yada. And then you can kind of like merge both data endpoint into one, end-to-end view, if you like. And all of those three approaches are based on API integration only. So as you can see on the endpoint, there's nothing. There's no agents whatsoever. It's completely seamless. Now, if you overview those approaches, if you put them side by side, you can kind of like analyze them using multiple parameters, whether you have, how fresh is the data? Do you have it near real time? How much it costs to maintain it, right? How much it costs to really maintain it, to troubleshoot and to configure the system? How much it costs from an operational perspective? How many people do we need to involve within the organization just to make it happen? What's the technical performance? Do they really perform in production? And what's the data integrity? Can I really trust the data? Does the data really tell me the story of my attack surface, right? And how many threat models does this approach cover, right? Is it limited? Is it not limited? And what kind of remediation capability does this approach provide to me? Because at the end of the day, we're here to fix stuff. So you can see that all in all, the API push and pull strategy is what gives you the most benefit, right? Sure, it's not real time because it's not inline, it's not on your endpoint. That's fine. If you can live with the fact that it's near real time, right? Which means you can get those ongoing activity events within seconds. That's the biggest difference. So if you have a large on-prem presence, probably not good for you. Probably you want to stay with real time, right? Everyone else, sure, up to you. So we're done covering what led to this fragmentation. And it's all based on the initial technical implementation, right? Those different implementation led to different solutions in SaaS security, offering different benefits and capabilities and use cases, right? Let's talk a little bit about the impact. Like, sure, it's fragmented, so what? What's up for me? And so there are two things. First thing is the total cost of ownership, right? When you have too many solutions in general, but also specifically for SaaS security, it takes a lot more on the operational complexity because you have more permissioning that need to be done for those platforms. You have more people that need to be involved from IT, from compliance, from threat detection and response, and so on. Maintenance is higher, right? You have more user interfaces, more user experiences, more support team, more feature requests. Maintenance is just higher. Also, the learning curve is worse because when you onboard more people to your security team, they have to learn more systems. Each system had its own language, terminology, right? So just a really big business overhead overall. And of course, larger spend. You spend to more vendors. On the flip side, and I think the more important side, you have more security blind spots. So the more system you have, the lower your mean time to respond and to detect. And that's everything we live by in security, right? How much time did it take me to understand the issue and to resolve the issue? It takes longer if you have to deal with too many systems. You have context switching between different platforms in SaaS security that give you different insights. That is very confusing. Each of those systems generate different alerts. Too many alerts can get you into alert fatigue. We don't want to get there. And I keep talking about data integrity. That's the biggest key. You have to trust your data, right? And if you have multiple systems showing you your data differently, you don't even know what's true. Who do you believe? And ultimately, you also have multiple points of failure. Each of those SaaS security vendors now have always access to your most critical, SaaS platform, and they can get breached as well, right? Nobody is safe. And the more vendors they're on board, the more likelihood they're going to affect on your security posture. That's just in general about why that this fragmentation is so impactful on your business. The question is, fine, I get it. Okay, I understand. There are multiple approaches. They are originated with different technical implementation, and this is the impact. What can I do about it? We believe in SaaS security platformization. We believe that down the road, you don't have to deal with too many vendors to comprehend SaaS security, right? Let's see how it works. At the end of the day, you're going to have an integration layer, right? Any vendor in SaaS security has to have an integration layer where they connect to your different SaaS tenants. Microsoft, Google, Slack, Box, GitHub, Salesforce, doesn't matter, right? They have to connect to those. They have to also connect to your additional platform that you may have in place, your HR system, your identity provider, your EDR, to go ahead and enrich that SaaS metadata. That vendor needs to consolidate it all into one unified data layer to help you understand and have the single source of truth, right? Again, data integrity is key. You got to have one single source of truth to visualize all SaaS security threats for you. It includes near real-time events representing people activity, representing OS app activity, installation, and ongoing API calls, but also the inventory side of the world. How much data do I have? How many users do I have? Who is exposed to it? How many shadow apps do I have? And so on and so forth. You got to have the inventory as well as the events to comprehend SaaS security. You can't have just one of them. If you only have the inventory, you don't understand user behavior. If you only have events, you don't understand what's the impact on your business. By having both, you get the full picture. From there, I would expect you to get some kind of alert about anomalies ongoing, right? There's a lot of stuff that the vendor can show you within the inventory, or within the event, but the real important thing, the key value, is to identify what really matters, reduce the noise, and identify the threat on your behalf. That's one thing. The other thing is the analytics. We can't expect you to be a SaaS security expert, understanding what does Slack terminology looks like, what does Google terminology looks like. You gotta have a number, user experience to just present you the information in an analyzed manner. So you are in position to make tough decisions. For example, I'm seeing that the finance SharePoint is overly exposed. Fine, let's go ahead and remediate. And the other piece, of course, is automation. It is key because it doesn't matter how good you are in working with the inventory and working with the analytics and the threat. At the end of the day, 80% of those insights are repetitive, are driven by the very same user behavior, very same business interaction that cause more and more risk to your organization. It's best to just go ahead and remediate and automatically either remediate that or just facilitate that internally so that the relevant person can go ahead and remediate. Right? That is based on automation. This is a lot. Let's take a pause for a second. A SaaS security platform must have an integration layer, a data layer. You got to have events, inventory. You got to have a way to detect alerts, a way to analyze all of your inventory, and an automation engine. This is highly opinionated, of course, but that's our belief. From there, once you have all those things in place, you're well in position to provide multiple solutions within the SaaS security domain, right? Things like a CASB, right? I want to have a way to control access to my SaaS application, either manually or automatically. I want to have data loss prevention solution in place. I want to classify PHI, PII, sensitive information being exposed internally and externally and do something about it. I want to have an insider risk solution so I can prevent data exfiltration by high-risk employees or leaving employees or executives or admins. I want to have a shadow app solution to mitigate all of those vulnerable third-party apps who have access permissions to your company's SaaS tenants. I want to have a SaaS security posture management solution to prevent all of those misconfiguration ongoing, right? I gotta respond to those misconfiguration in a real-time manner based on ongoing audit logs. And on top of that, I want to provide security automation on top of all of those solutions. Wrap it up with robust, consistent, and clear playbooks that your leadership can understand and trust. That's how we see this platformization movement, if you like, which involve multiple components. It's not easy. It's very complex. But that's the future, we believe, of SaaS security. Talk a little bit about what is the potential impact of such ever complex, platform. Today, we see it all the time. You have customers using two vendors for two use cases, all within SaaS security, right? Classic example, hey, I'm using X for CASB and Y for shadow apps. But ultimately, you want to use the same vendor for both. Because what happens if you do so, you have fewer vendors, it's easier to audit, you're going to save money, you're going to improve security because you have fewer points of failure. It's easier to learn to deal with one vendor versus more. It's easier to onboard, easier to offboard if you don't like the vendor. It's fine as well. Easier to offboard. Simpler pricing to work with internally. And honestly, you have less legal overhead as well. So there's a lot of impact on you specifically, on the security team, if you do go for platformization. In terms of benefits, we could think about a few, starting with, first and foremost, reduce attack surface. If you platformize SaaS security, you're going to have, again, better data integrity, which means that you have a better sense of how your data is exposed, and you have a better sense of how to remediate that exposure and ultimately reduce the attack surface. Plain and simple. You're going to lower the mean time to detect and respond security incidents because you don't have to look after them in multiple systems because you can rely on a particular vendor or not multiple because you can open feature requests for that vendor to improve certain stuff that help you to reduce, to lower MTD and MTTR critical. You're going to have a single source of truth to answer questions when things go wrong, and they do go wrong often, right? You want to answer what vulnerable shadow apps we have. Sure. You're going to answer who from finance is exposing us externally, and is it or not malicious activity. You're going to answer things like, how many Gmail accounts have access to our data? How many of them are relevant? How many third-party domains have access to our data? How many of them are relevant? How many misconfigurations were done last month by admins? So many different questions, mission-critical questions, should be answered by a single source of truth. Because if you go after them in multiple systems, how can you trust who is right and who is wrong? Again, data integrity is key. Full threat models coverage. At the end of the day, we are all in the threat modeling game. It's our duty to cover as many of them on each and every security domain, and specifically SaaS security. If you platformize, you solve for more use cases, right? You have full threat model coverage. And ultimately, you're going to lower your total cost of ownership because you're going to deal with fewer customer success teams, support teams, legal overhead, procurement, product maintenance, internal operational complexity, feature requests, performance issues, and I can go on and on. So all in all, we believe it's quite beneficial to go for SaaS security platformization. And now the question is, okay, I'm sold. What's next? So we think you can take a couple of good steps toward your SaaS security journey moving forward in 2023. Just like every security area, you have to identify your top threat model. What makes sense to your organization? Is it Microsoft? Is it Google? Is it Slack? Is it encryption keys uploaded to Slack? Is it shadow apps in Google? Is it misconfiguration on Microsoft? Come up with a list of your top SaaS security threat models. Then go through the market. It's a free market. Correlate those use cases with the existing SaaS security vendor, right? Create a matrix of who solves what to help you understand and eliminate the one that doesn't solve the things that matter to you. POC with vendors that cover the most use cases so that you can see the most ROI and the highest value for money, right? Demand those vendors to solve even more. Tell them that, hey, this threat model means a lot to us. We have to solve it. We're going to go on a SaaS security platformization. When are you going to do it? And you have to work with vendors that are really innovating at a good pace. Because as you saw earlier, SaaS security is very complex, has a lot of moving pieces. This requires some, responsiveness from the vendor perspective. That's generally our recommendation moving forward. And now I'd like to open it up to some question and answers. I'm sure we'll have a nice conversation now.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. It was awesome. We do have a number of questions that have come in. Actually, one of the last ones that just came is on that last slide you had. What are some of the top threat models and use cases that you're seeing, either at your own company or in your own world of SaaS security?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen all of them. Everything we showed are there. I would say that the most trendy one recently are definitely around your data access. Who's access to your data? How is it exposed? It's unbelievable the kind of findings that we generate on behalf of our customers to help them understand how big is the problem and what to do about it. On top of that, clearly, SaaS security supply chain is huge. You saw in the latest breaches, there's a breach every single month by a top company. And it's not because those top companies don't have good security team. They have phenomenal security team. They just don't have the tools in place to solve that, right? At the end of the day, it's technology powered by people, but those people also need the technology to be best at their role. And so definitely SaaS security supply chain is there. I would say that also, the automation around this whole thing, security team don't want to deal with that ongoing. They hate manual work, repetitive tasks. So that it's not really a threat model, but it's becoming a big concern for security team who have to spend so much time manually.
Got it. Next, I think it's something similar, but somebody's asking, what are CISOs and folks in the industry worried about? Like, why do you think the platform model, what's it going to solve for? Like, what's the pain point that you see out there?
100%. Look, we're not operating in silo. We're part of a bigger industry. And you see the macroeconomic changes on that industry, but you also see the security breaches ongoing. So there's a conflict between organization understanding they need to improve security, as well as organization need to reduce costs and headcount. Big conflict, very contradictory. And that formula is not perfect. There's not a clear solution as of now, but there has to be an effort from both sides of the fence. Right? Like security team definitely need to improve security, but they have to find a way to do so more efficiently. And that not just the spend, but also how much work is needed by security team peers or other teams, right? Because if IT need to integrate to every single security vendor week after week after week, it's becoming a pain, right? If procurement have to renew so many different security vendors, they don't have time for other teams' procurement, right? So I think what 2022 teaches is that security teams are not in silo anymore. They're part of a bigger story, and they have to play by the game and be very sensitive toward other teams. And one way to do so is to platformize wherever possible, right? Wherever possible.
Cool. Another one in here, you mentioned on one of your slides, you talked about security blind spots. So they're asking, what are some examples of security blind spots that platform would solve for?
Yes, 100%. So I'll give you one of the recent example by one of our customers using a combination of CASB and insider risk and shadow ops, is that they have employees who left the company, right? And they installed a bunch of shadow ops throughout their journey at the company. And those shadow ops have access to company data, right? Now, this employee is gone. They left the company, but the apps they installed are still there, and they still have access to company data. Now, what they didn't know is, first of all, are those apps really still access the data? We show them that they do. And what kind of acts did they perform? Do they perform like read or write or stuff like that? And they do, as well as the kind of data sensitivity they access to. So all in all, it's a big win, because now they're like, okay, when we lay people off, which is never a fun story, at least we know the kind of programmatic access they grant third parties, as well as the impact on our business in terms of what data sensitivity those third parties are accessing to. That is huge.
And I see one more question here. If you guys have more questions, feel free to put them in the box there. On integrations, how long does an integration take to set up, and are there any limits on how many integrations can be used and how many in general are you seeing out there?
100%. So between a quarter or two, no, I'm kidding. All of our integrations are based on OAuth, which means it's an agentless. You don't have to install anything on the endpoint or on a browser. What happens is that you hit to connect, let's say, Microsoft, and that redirects you to the Microsoft authentication flow, which tells me, we visualize to you what kind of permission we request on your behalf to perform the service. You can use read-only, you can read write, it doesn't matter. Once you hit the consent, Microsoft is generating an API token for us to perform API calls on your behalf, and the whole process takes like 5 seconds, right? We support more than 15 different SaaS ecosystems, the most major one, and we visualize more than thousands in plural shadow apps within those SaaS ecosystems. So all in all, you get a really good grasp of what's going on within your SaaS security poster.
Cool. I think that wraps it up. And if you guys do have more questions, just go to DoControl.io. You can go to our contact us. We've got a demo form if you'd like to set up some time to see how it would look in your own environment. And browse around for some of the past webinars we've done. There's some great information in there, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, Adam. It was great.
Thank you for joining.